Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy 2025 as well. Hope you enjoyed a fun new year of watching really a fantastic Arizona State-Texas game. Cam Scatterbo and the Fighting Kendall Valenzuelas couldn't quite get that victory. Still a fun time, though. And then, of course, Ohio State just doing Ohio State things against those Ducks. But yeah, still have plenty of fantasy football and NFL goodness to get excited for this week as well. And accordingly, I am joined by the one, the only Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Dwain, how was your New Year's Eve and New Year, man?
It was great. I have a good buddy of mine that's a huge UT fan. Actually, I live in Texas. I know a lot of huge UT fans down here. But yeah, one of my buddies, Will, I texted him after the game because it went to overtime. I played poker with him last week, and I was like, how you feeling? He's like, well, I know we can beat Arizona State, but that's all I know. Like, he was real confident. So afterwards, I was like, hey, did you nearly have a heart attack? He goes, no. He goes, but what's funny is he's got his son is like 9 or 10 years old. He goes, man, my blood pressure's high, is what his son said during the game, which I thought was pretty hilarious. So yeah, UT hung on. Very entertaining game. We got all the overtime, not necessarily expected. But yeah, man, it was a great New Year's Day. Hanging out, watching ball with the family. So always good. And man, great day to be great for Ohio State, Ian.
Indeed, Dwayne. Took the words right out of my mouth, I believe. So, yeah, it really was fun. But again, plenty of, time the rest of this offseason. We'll have our Thor Thursdays here kicking off soon to really get into some of those prospects. For now, they're going to be focusing today on player incentives, who actually has something to play for in Week 18, and accordingly, what moves we should be making. So, still trying to help out you absolute savages out there that have a Week 18 fantasy championship for whatever reason, and otherwise, maybe just playing some DFS or just soaking in some good old fashioned American professional football. So, Dwayne, could kick things off with teams who have must-win games and, talk about maybe who we could expect the biggest performances from. Now, to be specific, the Lions, Vikings, Falcons, Buccaneers, Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals have everything to play for. And really, man, the game of the week and maybe, fingers crossed, knock on wood, game of the year, this Lions-Vikings rematch going down on Sunday night, Dwayne. Fireworks, almost guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, we're really getting an extra playoff game with this one because we've got seeding on the line. We've got two amazing teams that honestly could be the top two seeds in the NFC. So it's a situation where you've just got one of these loaded divisions, man. I mean, you got the Packers sitting right there. They haven't been able to quite get it done against those teams this year. But I mean, it's just a loaded division. So we've got a game where we've got two teams that know each other. You know how this goes, Ian. Sometimes you get a shootout. Sometimes you get a dud. We've got two very capable offenses. Right now, though, man, I would really lean to the Vikings because I just feel like when you look at the Lions, it's just the defense, man, and all the injuries they've suffered on that side of the ball. They've just not been able to stop anyone. Early in the year, what we saw from Detroit was a team that could just be super balanced. They could do whatever they wanted. They still can on offense, but sometimes those game scripts really get them because they get into that trailing mode or in a mode where they just know they're going to have to shoot out, right? They're going to have to go point for point. And that's what we're all hoping for. If you guys are playing any sort of fantasy this weekend, whether it's DFS, you're playing a daily best ball challenge, whatever it may be, this is the game that everyone's going to attack. This will be the most rostered the most rostered players from the weekend. I don't know that we really need to recap any of them, Ian, because I don't think there's anything to say differently about these players. Obviously, we still don't have Dave Montgomery, so Jahmyr Gibbs is our running back one, I believe across all of our rankers this weekend, but all these guys will be ranked very high. Justin Jefferson, obviously in the top 5, Amon-Ra St. Brown across the board, pretty much in the top 6 or 7. So it's a loaded game.
Big storyline really surrounding it has just been Sam Darnold continuing to obviously make his case for comeback player of the year, and you want to put him in the MVP discussion. I'm not going to call you a crazy person, but accordingly, Dwayne, the kind of just question, will he continue to be the Vikings starting QB in 2025 and beyond? Obviously with Paul Charchian and Thor on the staff, we do have some resident Vikings fans, and they're split, man. I've heard Charch say the way Darnold's playing, the numbers and everything, how could you not go back to this guy? You found your quarterback. Why are you trying to mess it up? But Thor points out that, again, J.J. McCarthy probably would be the number 1 overall pick, at least the number 1 quarterback if he were to go out in this draft as well. Why not trust a guy that Kevin O'Connell obviously brought in for a good reason? So do you have an early lean on this, Dwayne? Because I have a feeling this is a question and topic that's not going away anytime soon.
My guess is the contract that's going to be demanded from Sam Darnold, is what it's really going to come down to. Have teams learn their lesson here recently, Ian, that they can't sign some of these system quarterbacks and expect them to just come in unless you're going to surround them. So Sam Darnold, you need to be, if you're going to pay him, you need to have weapons that are going to already be around him. And so I think that immediately starts to dwindle down the list, because some of these teams that are really terrible, like they need more of a complete rebuild. Like there are some teams out there, that we could talk through where you would walk in, you would immediately have some pretty good weapons, right? And maybe Sam Darnold could get it going. But let's say a borderline team like the Raiders. Like we love Brock Bowers. We're going to talk about Brock Bowers here in a little bit. We really like Jacoby Myers, but is that enough? That's not Justin Jefferson, man. You don't have like a guy that can completely do everything. And look, guys, we absolutely love Brock Bowers. And maybe Brock Bowers will be the tight end that's as good as a high-end wide receiver one like Justin Jefferson. But like that's a borderline one. So then you start thinking of all the teams that are below that. I would kind of struggle. But it's the NFL, man. They're going to be hungry for this. So I think it really does come down to the contract for Darnold. But if it's reasonable at all, if I'm the Vikings, I'm re-signing him. What's the problem with having two good quarterbacks, right? You need one. And to your point, he has already proven that he can do it in this system. So we'll see where that contract lands, man. But if it's reasonable, I think the Vikings, I think they have to do it.
If they cannot find a reasonable contract, certainly plenty of teams that will take, more than just a flyer, probably, a hefty 9-figure plus million contract on Mr. Donald off the way he's played this year. The Raiders, Raiders, Rams, Giants, Jets, Colts, and Saints could be in consideration. Maybe not the Rams, we'll see, but, they had that early kind of rework of Matthew Stafford's contract in August that essentially made it more of a one-year deal. Matthew Stafford getting a little bit older. I know Sean McVay certainly is one of these guys who, similarly to, O'Connell, could probably scheme up the sort of shots that bring out the best in Sam Darnold. So again, great stuff from Darnold this year. He certainly earned the right to be paid as, one of the top quarterbacks in the league at this point. We'll see again what Kevin O'Connell decides. I'm going to go ahead and just, completely remove myself from having an overly strong opinion, Dwayne, and say I trust whatever Kevin O'Connell wants to do here, because I think that man has earned it at this point. So again, those were the must-win teams that, we are keeping an eye on in week 18, especially looking forward to that Sunday night shootout, but more good games ahead, even for teams who maybe don't have quite as much to play for, looking at guys that have some incentives to win. So Ravens, Steelers, Chargers, Commanders, and Packers. Now, the Ravens do need to win, but the thing is they are 17.5-point favorites over the DTR-led Browns. So we're kind of assuming, shocker, they're going to be able to get the job done there. And assuming they do, then the Steelers won't have quite as much to play for. But, Dwayne, I feel like we know Mike Tomlin, and if we had to, say, is he more of the Sean McVay rest guys, if there's any reason to, or if this Dan Campbell side of things where it's like, no, we came here to play football, we're going to play football. I think Tomlin leans a little bit more towards not resting anyone.
Yeah, he's already said when he was asked about the game and they were asking him about resting starters, he goes, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be in that mindset. Like, I just don't think it's part of this guy's mentality. We got another guy we need to talk about here in a minute with Harbaugh. I think he's probably in that similar vein, for the Chargers. You mentioned it with the Ravens. They're huge favorites, right? So even if like their starters are all playing because they've got to win this game just to guarantee that they're in the playoffs. But I could also see the Ravens like resting the starters by the fourth quarter. It all depends on like does Stefanski have the Browns actually fighting or not. And again, guys, trying to make rankings and projections on a week like this, honestly, it's a fool's errand until like Saturday. Like we don't have any games before then. Like we're making them. We've all put them together. But man, when you're sweating the details, right, at this point in the week of who's going to play and who's not, like all of the waters are so murky. But we'll continue to wade through them. We know a lot of you guys want to play daily fantasy this weekend. You got some stuff you want to do in best ball. But yeah, looking over at the Steelers, I do expect them, no matter what happens in that early game, to come out and play their guys. Now, if the game is well in hand, like maybe they rest some guys by halftime. Maybe they do some things they wouldn't normally do. But I think early in the game, you'll see all the starters. And if the game is close, I think you can see the starters the whole way. So I think it really will come down to how the game plays out. Obviously, if the Ravens lose, they're going to be pedal to the metal the whole way.
Derrick Henry, Dwayne, only 323 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. I would die laughing if Dickerson obviously thinks he's in the clear now with Saquon presumably resting for this week, and Henry somehow backdoors his way, has one of the biggest games ever, and takes down the record. Won't happen, I get it, but you guys could imagine what it'd be like if it did. But yeah, I mentioned those Browns real quick, and just wanted to give, kind of the opposite of a shout-out, I guess, to Dorian Thompson-Robinson, because now, Dwayne, over the past 20 years, DTR is responsible for the only 2 seasons where a quarterback has thrown the ball at least 100 times and averaged under 4 yards per pass attempt. Yeah, this is the guy they benched
wow.
James Winston for. So
that's impressive. Cool. That's very impressive.
Again, said it when he came out. Like, it's very hard to find quarterbacks that have played worse than Deshaun Watson over these past few years. The Browns managed to do so. They did it, man. So last point would be the Ravens, man. Dwayne, I have an article coming out tomorrow on the biggest weakness of, every kind of playoff team looking ahead. And while Baltimore, I think pretty easily you could say, oh, yeah, their pass defense, they've gotten a lot better over these past 6 weeks or so, man. And yes, part of it has been matchups, but shout out to ESPN's Ben Solak brought up how really Kyle Hamilton started playing more of a deep safety role as opposed to his usual, just kind of lurking around the box. Weeks 1 through 10, Dwayne, Ravens were 30th in EPA per dropback. Since week 11, though, they are first. So not saying they're necessarily all just resuming status as one of the best defenses in the league like they were in 2023, but at a minimum, man, they are not looking like the disaster that we saw during the first few months of the year.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about fantasy playoff contests and things like that, obviously, like, there's a lot of moving parts, and trying to figure out just which teams are going to move forward, much less who they're going to be facing and their opponents and defensive strength of schedule, all that stuff. But for the Ravens, man, for much of the year, we talk about quarterbacks every week. Oh, they're playing the Ravens. We're playing them. We're starting them. The Ravens, what they've done from a standpoint of fantasy boost allowed, Ian, it was one of the easiest early actually all the way through the middle of the year. But what they've done over these last few weeks, which actually adjusts for their opponents that they've played, they're now down to minus 0.3 fantasy boost to the opposing quarterback. So neutral or slightly below neutral. That ranks 23rd, with 32nd being the hardest, right? First being the easiest whenever I talk about these numbers. So, they've moved past the midpoint, which is pretty impressive considering how bad they were early. So, yes, they have made dramatic strides in their pass defense.
Very excited again to see who they end up, playing in the playoffs and if Lamar can overcome some of those January demons. Let's move on, though, to some teams with nothing to play for at this point. Talking about the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, the Texans, and the Rams locked into their seeding. If they win or they lose, nothing will change ahead of their first or second round matchups here. So already got confirmation from Sean McVay that Jimmy G starting for the Rams. Carson Wentz is starting for the Chiefs. We have Saquon and key starters expecting to rest, for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts still in concussion protocol as well. Sean McDermott confirmed Mitchell Trubisky, who, by the way, leads the NFL in yards per attempt, men 5 attempts. He is expected to play most of the game ahead of Josh Allen. They're just going to kind of continue his starting streak and then probably take him out after one drive. And then also the Texans, Dwayne, do seem like the one team that maybe do want to go out there and give their starter some run, which not saying will be a starter, but the offense will include Mr. Deontay Johnson. Maybe, Stephon Diggs was a good example of disgruntled wide receivers finding new happiness and hope in Houston.
Well, look, we know Deontay Johnson can play. Like, there's no doubt about it. Obviously, there's something going on with Deontay that just doesn't work with these NFL teams. And, man, you have to go back again to give another hat tip to Mike Tomlin, not just a guy that's a never give up attitude. Hey, we're going to play through the whistle all the time, no matter the circumstances. But look, this guy dealt with Antonio Brown, and obviously Deontay Johnson was probably an issue for a while. He's got George Pickens. Who knows what George Pickens would be like without Mike Tomlin? This guy is it's amazing like what he's been able to do with these guys, because now once we saw these players leave, man, it was just a mess wherever they landed. Now, Deontay Johnson with the Texans, like, they obviously need him, Ian. So, I mean, if they can get him going, like John Mechie's the other guy that stepped up here in recent weeks since the injuries to Stephon Diggs and most recently Tank Dell. He was just playing in the slot, was playing more in the base personnel over the last few games. Remember, Mechie was a second-round pick out of Alabama, had to battle through cancer. He's been through a lot since just being drafted 3 seasons ago. Has played pretty respectable over these last couple of games, but if Deontay Johnson can get going, earn the trust of the coaches, we know that he is a guy that can go out there and he can break down man coverage. He knows how to handle zone coverage. He's not like this elite separator over the top of a defense, but man, he can catch you with a move and sneak past you. So there's a lot to like about him. So I'm very interested in seeing what he looks like with CJ Stroud, because they do need another weapon to really help because in the playoffs, man, you're going to just play better teams. And if I'm playing against the Texans, you're playing against the Texans, the only thing you're doing is you're saying Nico Collins is not beating us. And we saw that in the last game, whenever they came out and they're trying to throw those little screen passes to Nico, the one that got the Cowboys for a touchdown. And luckily it didn't count because there was a lineman downfield or some crap. Like, the Chiefs weren't allowing that. Like, they were just bottling that up. They were like, nope, we're not going to give you those screen looks to Nico and that sort of stuff. So I think you need someone else to help take the pressure off of Nico Collins and, just to help CJ Stroud. So he didn't feel like he has to be forcing things. So very, very interested to see Deontay Johnson. We do have examples, man, of wide receivers acclimating really quickly. Not so much this year. But going back to that year where Amari Cooper came over to the Cowboys, I don't know if you remember that, but right away, Ian, man, like Amari Cooper was balling out with Dak Prescott. So it will be interesting to watch this one.
Nice debut against the Titans, I remember. Had like 200 yards against the Eagles a few weeks later. Probably, the best example we do have of that in somewhat recent memory. But you said it, man. Teams are going to do everything they can to stop Nico Collins. Would it be nice if Houston's $36 million tight end could do literally anything out there? Yeah, but again, I think we've seen enough examples at this point to know that will not be the case. So last thing I want to go over with these squads, Dwayne mentioned it, going to be Jimmy Garoppolo starting for the Rams, but accordingly going to have Kyron Williams resting as well, and it certainly seems like Blake Corum then could be getting a workhorse role, something that Sean McVay more or less confirmed, noting, I'm excited about watching Blake Corum get a heavy workload. So I'm no Peter Overset cash game king in the DFS streets over here, Dwayne, but I do wonder, man, like Blake Corum, some of these rushing props and everything, hitting all the overs this week.
Yeah, I mean, we know that he's going to get we say we know nothing. We think he's going to get the workload. It was confirmed. That does help us. He was a guy that I already had inside my top 18 in my original ranks this week. Going to have to bump him up again. Haven't had a chance to adjust that since we got the confirmation. But the one challenge, Ian, is it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo passing to who? Are we going to have Cooper Kupp? Are we going to have Puka Nacua? How long are we going to have those players? If you get one of those players, like for half the game, and you also have Tutu Atwell filling in for the other player that's missing, whether that's Kupp or Nacua, and then you got Demarcus Robinson. Like that's probably enough to feel decent, about Corum. But if it's going to be no Puka, no Cooper Kupp, and now we're just having to rely on these backups with Jimmy Garoppolo, who is scared to death, guys. If you ever watch this man play quarterback, he is a beautiful man, but he does not want to be hit. He's one of the guys that the defenders talk about that, he's always moaning and groaning before they even get to him, or they don't touch him and they hear him wincing. Look, Jimmy Garoppolo, way tougher than me. He plays NFL quarterback. He's way bigger than me. He could take a hit better than me. But man, like I don't know. I do get a little bit worried about the overall upside. The touches will be there for Blake Corum, and he'll be highly motivated because he's going to want to come out and show what he has. We know he doesn't get that many touches because McVay's very willing to load up one guy, but still, we'll have to see what all the other news is. I can't imagine myself getting him into the running back 1 conversation, though. I feel like probably mid-range running back 2, but some other dominoes could fall. We got guys that are just, how it goes in week 18, Ian. A guy's got a hangnail and they'll sit him. And they should. Like, if it's a player that you like, he's going to be on your roster the next year. Like, what's the incentive, like, to ride him in week 18 if your playoff hopes are gone?
It is one of these things where we've seen these examples before where you get excited about, the potential for a featured workload. But to your point, Dwayne, on an offense that we no longer have that same just feel good vibe about them being one of the best in the league this week, tougher to get too excited. And accordingly, I think we've seen some duds in the past that make you, in hindsight, be like, what the F?
Hey, Ian,
yeah.
Where are you at on Gainwell? Because Gainwell's a similar thing. We're going to have Kenny Pickett. Probably not. It sounds like we won't have A.J. Brown, won't have Devonta Smith. They said they're going to rest key starters. Those are key starters. I'm assuming those 2 receivers are not playing. Kenneth Gainwell's played really well this year. So if they play most of their offensive line, like, they've got a matchup where I actually think he could be solid. But is he someone that they just wouldn't run into the ground? And maybe they let Tyrion Davis-Price, we don't know if Will Shipley's going to play. He had a concussion last week. So, I mean, I'm wondering, like, that's the guy I struggled with the most this morning when I was re-looking at the ranks. I was like, man, where do I put Gainwell? Right now, I've got him like low end running back 2.
We can't know, man. It's so tough. Even the Blake Corum stuff. Why are you going to give him 30 touches if he is your clear-cut number 2? Just let Ronnie Rivers, get hurt or something like that. No offense, Ronnie Rivers and your friends and family. So, yeah, man, I think with Gainwell, because they legitimately do make a habit of using him, and he has, to his credit, I think, shown some nice bursts, particularly as underneath pass catchers, third down specific backs. So, yeah, as much as Gainwell, you want to rank him high. I think I had him kind of like RB22, RB23 ahead of this one. So winnable enough matchup there. Whoever ends up getting the rock for Philly, I'm sure is going to be fine. But are the starting offensive linemen even going to play? Again, a lot of questions there for these teams with nothing to play for. Also, a lot of questions for the teams who are already eliminated entering Week 18, of which there are plenty of them. But I'm especially wondering, Dwain, if we're even going to see Anthony Richardson out here. Obviously missed last week with that back injury, and wasn't something that I think any of us figured was too severe. Just wasn't ideal, wasn't able to play. Not that we accuse him of being soft or anything, but we had reports from beat writers on Wednesday and Thursday saying there's optimism he was going to play. Not sure where that optimism was coming from, Dwain, because we found out this week that Richardson literally couldn't walk last week and was forced to crawl around his house due to a lower back issue. So got an MRI showing that there was a disc problem, and Richardson says he's feeling much better. He's standing up now. Good start to, going back to playing NFL quarterback, but man, maybe just let the guy chill, because as we've seen with Richardson over the years, not exactly one to take care of his body when he is out there.
Yeah, and if we get Flacco, that's a little bit of a help, obviously, to Michael Pittman and Josh Downs. But last week we saw that wasn't necessarily worth as much as it was earlier in the year. But yeah, with Richardson, I'm with you. I'm resting the guy. He's your starting quarterback, for next season. At least we think that he is. But man, this guy's injuries are starting to really pile up, Ian, and he's just got to learn how to take better care of his body. I know you're an absolute beast of a human being, but you're playing against some other pretty big, mean dudes out there. So trying to not take some hits has got to be something they got to be thinking about this offseason and trying to figure out how they balance that. I know that's always hard, right? Because you've got an athlete that's just a competitor. They're wanting to just go out there and do, the things that they've always done their entire life, which is just dominate other human beings and make them look silly. But you've now reached a level where you do have to protect yourself some. And man, at least think about your future and all the dollars that are on the table for you. Yeah. If anything, at least just think of that. You only get one shot at something like this in your life. But as far as Richardson goes, yeah, I think we will see Joe Flacco this weekend. Jonathan Taylor, that's the other interesting one. He's going to play, but how long do you play him? You're not playing for anything. You've paid Jonathan Taylor. You've got him locked up with a contract. Week 18, man. It's one of the wildest things ever. On one end of the spectrum, we have a literal playoff game between the Lions and the Vikings. On the other end of the spectrum, we have preseason all in the same week. So, I mean, you got to just, you have to at least just sit back and enjoy the fact that there's such a wide range of different types of games that we're going to see this weekend.
It's early. We're going to have plenty of time to debate, our rankings. Actually, soon enough, I think we'll probably be going through some way too early stuff here on the Fantasy Life show. But with Richardson, Dwain, again, I'm with you. I think that they're going to go ahead and give him another season as a de facto, locked in starter. But hey, we already saw this year, poor performance / taking your own self out of the game led to a benching. And he came back and showed off some of that, fantasy just upside again. QB2 finished in his first game off the bench, but 21, 11th, 17th, and 13th after that. I mean, this was a guy going regularly QB5, QB6, and it made sense based on what we've seen from rushing quarterbacks in the past. But, when you're looking at the numbers, Dwayne, we said it, you could be worse than Tim Tebow and still have fantasy upside. Richardson is really making us fight for that, idea out here. So it has been rough as a passer. I just think, if anything, because it might be tough to rank him outside the top 12 just because of the projections and the rushing and all that. But my lesson, I think, from the whole Richardson experience, and yeah, probably drafting him more than I should have this last year, don't get cute with some of these quarterbacks when you're using high round picks on them. If you're going to do that, man, I want to use it on Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. Otherwise, let's just take some shots at the end.
Well, at the same time we say that, and the year before you could have taken Jalen Hurts where you took Anthony Richardson and you loved it. You had the best quarterback. This year you took Jaden Daniels, yes, after, but on the same premise, a guy that had the dual threat nature. And we talked about in the preseason that if we thought, we're looking at this, and at the end of the year, we thought that Jaden Daniels had a chance to be at a similar rushing level as Richardson, we would take him as the passer over Richardson. So I think to your point, though, you can't take someone with such an outlier issue like what we saw with Anthony Richardson in that top 5 rounds. And as bad as his completion rate was in those things, I think that was just too much to overcome. At least with Jalen Hurts, we had seen him take a little bit of a step forward before we had to buy into spending, a round 6 pick or whatever it ended up being on him that season. So yeah, I think what happened, he got a little bit steamed because of how well Josh Allen just had a massive turnaround year several years back from being a bad passer. And then Jalen Hurts did it. But really, when you go back and look at it, it was only Allen that had that on a dime turnaround and his completion percentage. That year they signed Cole Beasley, which is the funny part about it. And I think John Smoke Brown, they added him as well. So, yeah, looking at those guys, like sometimes I think we do because we see the upside and we're like, man, 1,000 yards passing. If he just throws for 3,000, but scores 10 rushing touchdowns, it's going to be hard for him to not be a top 3 quarterback. But it's the outlier issue with how bad of a passer he was.
And look, with Hurts, we got A.J. Brown entering the picture. With Josh Allen, you mentioned it, Beasley, Smokey, then Diggs after that.
And Diggs was the blow-up year. Yep.
Yeah. What do we need with Anthony Richardson? I think the wide receiver corps is pretty good. I think the offensive line is good. Jonathan Taylor is good. I ran my supporting cast rating, which I've talked about before. They come out as 13th this year. I don't look at this offense and say, man, if Richardson just had a true number 1 receiver, my God, now he'd be completing 60% of his passes. I get it. The man is still only 22 or 23 years old at this point. Can't even rent an RV yet out here, but really going to take a leap of faith to expect him to, again, start to just play like, a professional quarterback, at least as a passer, on a more consistent basis. So again, those were teams, with varying levels of just what they're playing for this week. Now getting through some players, guys, who have the incentives to maybe get force-fed the football a bit more than usual. Going to get to all that and more right after a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. Grab your favorite team's jersey and some snacks and head to the couch for another Sunday of action-packed football. And you can get even closer to the action with my partners at DraftKings, because right now, all new DraftKings customers who bet just $5 will get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. That's right. New customers get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins after betting just $5. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have a shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use the promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, Dwayne, we got some rookie pass catchers trying to do some big things this week. Brock Bowers, Malik Nabers, and Brian Thomas Jr. all have already had fantastic rookie seasons, but also have the chance to cement their legacy even more by posting some year-one records. So just wanted to first, give a shout out to these guys, because Brock Bowers, tight end 2 in terms of PPR points per game as a rookie. Shout out Mike Ditka, only season better. Malik Nabers, after that massive week 17, Dwayne, now averaging 18.3 PPR points per game, only trails Odell Beckham Jr. and Randy freaking Moss among rookie wide receivers in PPR points per game in the Super Bowl era. And then Brian Thomas Jr. finished as the wide receiver 1 in the fantasy playoffs. I mean, what a freaking class of pass catchers, man.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to Ladd McConkey, who ranks 14th
Jalen
right now
Coker,
in receiving
I know,
yards. 1,054 yards right now for Ladd with 7 touchdowns as well. What's amazing about the 3 that we've got on the screen here, Ian, in my eyes, is like we also have just quarterback issues. Now, Aiden O'Connell's played pretty good over these last few games, but overall coming into the season, you've got a situation where none of these guys have star quarterbacks that are throwing them the ball. None of them even have what we would call average quarterbacks. Like, we could say that about Trevor Lawrence, but really, I mean, like, we don't have to go back there because you guys don't want to trigger me. He's been below average for his career. And so for these guys to do that, and then for Brian Thomas, honestly, like, his breakout weeks have really come with, obviously other pass catchers hurt, but just with Mac Jones, just saying, dude, I'm throwing it to you. Just go out there and do whatever you need to do. I'm going to get the ball to you. So really amazing stuff for all 3 of these guys to be able to come out here. And I know, Ian, Drew Lock is obviously, an all-pro, Pro Bowler, could start anywhere in the league. So with Malik Nabers, he's had that going for him here over these last few games. Well, at least one out of the last few games, it's worked out that way with Drew Lock. And obviously Malik Nabers doing a lot of the work on those plays for Drew Lock, making him look pretty good. But yeah, it's amazing, man, to see these guys come out and do this. Now, get them a quarterback upgrade, and suddenly you got a guy like Malik Nabers. He's scoring well in fantasy, but only 6 touchdowns on all this work. Give him a good quarterback, and that's where you have a chance to score 10. And again, that's what's amazing about Brian Thomas Jr. Dude's sitting on 10 touchdowns despite the quarterback issues.
And again, just we've seen meat left on the bone over these past couple games as well. The wide receiver one, he had a long drop, which very rare for him, but also get some misfires from Mac Jones, obviously amazing stuff. But let's focus on Brock Bowers here for a second because already holds the all-time rookie receptions record at 108. That said, Nabers is on his tail, just 104, so 4 catches off. The record, by the way, for tight ends in a single season, Zach Ertz at 116, so just 9 more for Bowers to be able to get all the way up there. Only George Kittle has a higher PFF grade among tight ends this season. Only Kittle and Trey McBride have more yards per route run than Bowers. So this is all, Dwayne, despite the fact that, again, with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew, haven't exactly seen anything close to the sort of touchdown ceiling we'd be expecting. And Bowers has played fantastic, not taking anything away from the guy. But one of his calling cards coming out was his ability to break tackles and be a yak beast. He's only been credited with 4 missed tackles forced this season. Maybe that's, 5 too few or something like that. But Zach Ertz, not exactly the king of yak, has 3 missed tackles forced this year. So it's wild, Dwayne, with Brock Bowers. Again, historically incredible rookie season. But I think there's still a good amount of room to grow here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, look, I would project, like, when you look at these tight ends and they get these catches underneath, typically those are going to be the players that have more yak. The further you go down the field, the more that you have to trade off your yards after the catch, because whenever you catch the ball, guess what? There's more people around you the further you move down the football field. So those two things work inversely to one another. But with Brock Bowers, like, we have no doubt about him as an athlete. Yeah. So probably an opportunity, to your point, to still be an even stronger yak player in the future. Also, improve the quarterback play, get him some more weapons around him. Those things can also help in those other categories. But again, just absolute amazing year from Brock Bowers. The only thing, how I know I'm getting old, Ian, and because I remember my dad talking to me about these things whenever these rookies would come in and break records, I'm like, well, we got an extra game. Back in the day, like, we've had multiple, versions of this. Like, Mike Ditka obviously has a complaint here, with his records all being broken, going back and looking at how many games he played. So look, yeah, Brock Bowers, you're awesome. You're probably going to break the rookie record. But, man, if you break Zach Ertz's record, like, man, he did it in 16 games. You did it in 17. We still love you, though.
Dwayne, we used to work at a PFF, and I remember we got to podcast with the Chris Collinsworth a couple times. He was always great to us, cool guy and everything. And yeah, I remember asking him about this during Kyle Pitts' rookie season. I was like, Chris, does it make you mad? Like, you see someone like Kyle Pitts and Dick has had this record, and Collinsworth doesn't even come close to answering the question. He just goes, Ian, I just like when your voice goes like this and up and down when you get excited about something. And I was like, all right, roasted, fair enough. I will sit this one out. So yeah, that was Collinsworth's thoughts on the matter. So amazing stuff by Brock Bowers. I will say, in regards to the Saquon 17, versus 16 game argument, Dickerson did have like 30, plus carries more than Saquon. So at least that one's a little bit more similar. But yeah, certainly with the passing, just shooting off in the NFL recently, tougher to make that argument, in favor of Bowers over Ditka. But hey, let's talk about these wide receivers real quick, because Brian Thomas Jr. currently leads the way in reception yards, 1,179. Bowers and Nabers not too far behind. But with BTJ, Dwayne, throw out the whole rookie designation, 5th in the NFL in receiving yards right now, behind only Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, only Jamar Chase has more receptions of 40-plus yards this year. Just incredible stuff from Brian Thomas Jr. And again, he has already been a legit wide receiver 1 in 2024. So why couldn't he soar into those top 5 heights in 2025, Dwayne? Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, they'll be back. But man, we've never seen those guys hold a candle to what BTJ is doing. Top 12 wide receiver for next year.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you think that or not. That's where he's going to get drafted. People won't care because he's been too good. And look, with good reason, when you have a young talent like this, Brian Thomas Jr. might be the next Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. So you're going to be having to draft him at the end of round 1, maybe early round 2, depending on, how much people care about the return of Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. But to your point, like, Christian Kirk, man, like, good year for Christian Kirk is a 19 to 20% target share. So great. Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't get to have 31%. He's going to have 26%. That's like where Justin Jefferson and some of these guys end up anyway, is in that 26, 28% range. If you can be in there and be a playmaker, you're good to go. The most impressive thing, and we've talked about this before, you can see this when you watch Brian Thomas Jr., but the numbers also back it up. Ian, you look at him and you look at his average air yards per target, 11.3. That's above all of these other rookies who are getting a lot of the work underneath and in the intermediate routes, because now he's doing that as well, because you see it in his yak. Yards after the catch per reception, 6.7. Malik Nabers sitting at 4.1. You talked about Brock Bowers sitting there at 5.3. So he's actually doing more after the catch, but he's also working further down the field than any of these guys. So he's a guy that can beat any type of coverage. You're going to man him up and you're going to let him run that slant route, against the blitz. He can hit it and make the big play. Or he can get over the top of you if you're going to give him that single high safety look and you get him to the right side of the field. And then against the zone coverage, he also has shown earlier in the year like he's got that ability, to work underneath or just blow the top off zone coverage. So, man, he's done it all. Like, this guy has literally done it all. So you have to look at Brian Thomas Jr. as being a guy that you want to bet, you want to bet on the upside of it. Like, he's already proven he can do all the things. I get a little more worried. And we talk about some of these players where, like, they're really more of like a niche player. Like, there's this one thing they do really well. And you're like, man, if that keeps happening, it's really good. But, like, will it? A guy like this, man, you can scheme him up any way you want as a coach. And honestly, if you're the quarterback, you just get into a game and the bullets start flying and you're just like, I'm just getting the ball to this dude.
Man, and we're going to have all these conversations. Brian Thomas Jr. or Malik Nabers, which one is better? And I think it's going to end up being like the former LSU teammate conversation between Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Yes, they're both incredible. We can talk about who's one, who's two. But, hey, we're looking at, again, already 4 of the very best wide receivers in the NFL. What are they putting in the water down there in Baton Rouge, man? Because I want some, and maybe, bring some of that up to Columbus, Ohio, or at least Arizona for maybe a certain other fellow rookie wide receiver while we are at it. So great stuff there, Dwain. More incentives to get to on the way. First, though, a quick shout out from our friends over at Bud Light.
Sunday. Time to suit up.
This is like half zips, kind of quarter zip.
And sacrifice your body.
This is fun.
Because no matter how hard you football, it's easy to Sunday.
Time to talk about some incentives in the contracts, Dwain. Guys who, again, for one reason or another, have a lot to play for, because if they check certain boxes, they will be seeing quite a few extra Benjamins in the old bank account. Something I think we can all, get behind. So kicking things off with Mr. Mike Evans' chase for 1,000 yards, currently just 85 away. And we actually had a quote from Baker Mayfield noting about, him trying to reach this mark for the 11th straight time. If we win, Mike is getting that record. And Dwain, even if they lose, I would like to think Mike has a good chance of getting that record.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the most achievable ones that we've seen, and everything lines up. Like, the Bucs need to win this game. They're playing their best football of the season. You don't have Chris Godwin there. Jalen McMillan's been really solid lately, but he's not a guy that demands 10 targets per game. Cade Otton has kind of fallen off. So, like, Mike Evans, he's proven he can do this. Like, I feel great about his chances of getting to this. I mean, he needs 5 catches to get to the 70. I think he's a lock for that. 85 yards, Ian. Like, I feel like he's a near lock for that. That's aggressive, guys, because if you look at how we set lines on players of Mike, Evans's caliber, when we do the projections and things like that, I say we don't set the lines. Vegas sets the lines, but we go through a similar process, and that's how we get to our projections. You're not going to project that many wide receivers to be over 85 yards. You're just simply not going to do that. But in a spot like this, where you've got this funnel in the offense, I think that Mike Evans has a chance to reach all these milestones, and then obviously, have a chance to go cash some bonus checks in the playoffs, Ian, as well. Those are worth quite a bit, as you see here on the screen, for every win that the Bucs are able to achieve.
I was surprised to see he's only hit 85 yards in 4 of 13 games this season, averaging 70 for the year, but I'm with you. Very, very attainable. Going to be another situation next year. We're going to have to battle with the history of these, aging wide receivers. But I do start to wonder, Dwain, if, being 32 in the year 2024 just doesn't mean as much as it did back in 2005. I mean, these guys, I do think it's fair to say, taking better care of themselves. Modern science and technology certainly helping with recovery and all of that. And hey, man, we'll see what happens with Chris Godwin's return. But at a minimum, whether it's Mike, McMillan, Godwin, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, I think the big thing we found out this year is that Liam Cohen knows what he's doing. Baker Mayfield certainly good enough to distribute the ball around at a high level, as we've seen for 2 straight years. Buccaneers, draft them everywhere.
Yeah, if you're Bucs ownership and you find out that you might be about to lose Cohen, I'm sorry, I would just make him the head coach. I'm not trying to bash on Bowles. Like, look what the Bucs have done in back-to-back years now. I mean, they got in the playoffs last year and obviously made some noise. But look, this is the guy you need. Like, look what Baker Mayfield has done. Like, it was great last year, with the quarterback whisperer Dave Canales. But now you take a step forward with Liam Cohen, and obviously meant Bucky Irving, dude. Like, that is just. He's been the guy that is really the straw that has stirred the drink, if you will, here lately for their offense. Man, how did that guy fall that far in the NFL draft? Just watching him, man. And we saw it in the preseason. Like, he was the guy that when you watched it, you're like, okay. Like, and I watched the film of him, so I'm in this bucket. I didn't, come out and pound the table for Bucky Irving. We liked him. The supermodel thought he was okay, but it wasn't a deal where like, oh man, this guy's going to be amazing. But a lot of people that I really love in the industry, like, didn't care much for Bucky Irving. And man, but when you watch him in the pros, like, dude, it is clear. Like, this guy is great. Like, he reminds me of, and not just everything stylistically, but it's basically he's doing what Jahmyr Gibbs was doing when he was having to split the backfield. Like, that's what Bucky Irving is doing right now. This dude comes out, and even if he only gets 50% of the work, man, you still feel great about having him in your fantasy lineup just because he is so good. But it feels like, man, always downfield before he's getting tackled, making the first guy miss. And he's not like, he doesn't waste a lot of movement, man. Like, everything is so intentional. Each cut that he sets up looks great. And at the same time, it was the perfect cut needed in that exact situation to gain an extra 3 yards. It's just great vision, great agility, all the things you need from a running back, man. And I think there's even more upside for him in the passing game as well. Like, I just love this dude.
I mean, 194 pounds, that's probably why a lot of people were down on him. But hey, as we saw with James Cook, maybe don't let 5-6 pounds that can be water weight, to a certain extent during the course of any given week, completely change your opinion on a prospect. All right. If you're 155 pounds like Kevontae Turpin, I get it. You're probably not going to be getting that 3-down roll. But just a lot of, I think, again, discourse around that weight being really the only issue people had. And, if that is the only problem that you have with a player and you're seeing him as affordable as he was in drafts, maybe that will be a risk worth taking. So Bucky, Evans, Godwin, all these guys certainly going to be near the top of the draft boards here soon enough. Another guy, though, Dwain, who does have a chance to make quite a bit of money this week is former Cowboys RB1, now Titans RB1, who has had a very nice season. I know we don't care about the Titans all that much because they haven't been winning many football games, but Tony Pollard out here, man, with a chance to hit 1,100 rushing yards on the year, needs 83 more, and that will trigger a pretty nice 200K bonus. Same thing with getting 2 more rushing touchdowns to get him to 7 on the year. So actually be up to 250K if he does get that rushing yards bonus, as you can see on our handy dandy graphic. So normally, Dwain, this would feel, pretty tough. 83, certainly tougher for a running back than maybe a wide receiver like Mike Evans. But considering Tajay Spears is also likely out of the picture with the concussion, I'm kind of liking Pollard's chances here.
Well, Pollard's going to be highly motivated. That's for sure. Like, if you're playing DFS this weekend, he's going to be a name that is highly motivated. It does come down a big part of it to Spears. Right away after the game, we had heard Spears would be out, and then suddenly it turned into, well, we're not quite sure. Hasn't practiced yet so far this week, though, so not looking good for Spears. And if that's what ends up happening here, you have to think that Pollard will go back to that, near workhorse sort of role that we saw from him earlier in the year. Now, you are going to be playing a team that you mentioned earlier with the Texans. Don't necessarily have to be motivated because they've already locked a playoff spot and they've backed their way. They won the division, so they didn't necessarily back their way. They are backing into the playoffs because they don't look good, but it's a scenario where we could still see the Texans, Ian, come out and do that sort of deal like you see in the preseason. You guys are going to play a quarter, you're going to play a half. We could see quite a few backups in the game by the second half. So I do think that there are a lot of factors working in Pollard's favor here, especially for the yardage. Getting 2 touchdowns, that's going to be tougher, but I'm with you. I think the yardage he's got a shot at here. You're still betting the under, like if you have to bet it, but like he does have a shot, will be highly motivated.
Really curious what the Titans are going to do at quarterback this offseason. Certainly one of the teams that, is in the running to use a top 5 overall pick. I'm one of, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward out here. But, hey, maybe they're also a team that looks more into the veteran quarterback market. Just please don't give me Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers or one of these guys, okay? I understand the whole Will Levis experience and experiment did not quite work out, but let's not go the complete opposite direction now and try to get the oldest and least mobile guy imaginable.
So this is a great example, Ian. Yeah. This is a great example of what we were talking about earlier. Go back to Sam Darnold. Like, you put Sam Darnold in Tennessee, I'm not really a fan. Look, we've seen Sam Darnold with some okay weapons in the past, guys, without Kevin O'Connell. Wasn't good. Never was good. So I'm hoping a team like the Titans, you don't make the mistake of going out and paying, Sam Darnold. Like maybe it ends up working out. Maybe his confidence is better now and everything is fixed. But man, I don't know. Like all you have is not Jerry Jeudy, Calvin Ridley, same thing. They say the same thing. Both from Alabama, both not quite lived up to what we want, but they show us flashes occasionally to go, oh, there it is. That's the thing that we thought that they were. So with Calvin Ridley, in the picture, like you would definitely still need like another strong target, for him. Now, Chico Conqua's come on down the stretch. Definitely have to give him a hat tip, but not someone that the coaching staff was really willing to use throughout the regular season. But I think this is a team. My main point, a great example of like, and I'll ask you this, like, how would you feel about Sam Darnold if he lands in Tennessee? Like, this is the kind of thing that I would rather him avoid.
Not good, but on the other side of things, how many quarterbacks would we feel good about going to Tennessee? Like 6, 7 or something? I wouldn't feel good about CJ Stroud in Tennessee.
Right, but that's the point. He's really in a group of guys that I think has to be in a really good situation, right? Yeah. I don't think he's one of these guys that's going to turn a franchise around on his own.
And I think that's the best argument for these quarterbacks. If you have a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes, someone that you can go to at least war with those guys, okay, they probably deserve the contracts. Do you actually want to pay the, Brock Purdy's, the Sam Darnolds of the world who do need this spruced up teammate environment? Because guess what? Once you pay them, it becomes that much tougher to actually get those sweet wide receivers and great offensive line anyway. So I'm with you on that argument, and I think there's a lot to be said for it. Would have, again, 4 more cost-controlled years with J.J. McCarthy. So starting off with the Vikings QB battle, ending with it. Still got a few more incentives, though, guys. First, though, a quick word to our friends over at Game Time. Dwayne, we both know there's nothing like being at a game in person, especially around the holidays. I mean, my goodness, I could not be more jealous of everyone that got to go to Pasadena to experience that Buckeyes beatdown over the Ducks yesterday. That just keeps starting the game at 5 p.m. I love the fact that the Rose Bowl tells, the rest of corporate America that, they can, not exactly force them to move the game around and things of that nature. So great stuff. And I hope that anyone that had the privilege of going to the Rose Bowl went through Game Time, because they are certainly my go-to for finding amazing tickets, not just for sports, but also for concerts and shows too. I was actually scrolling through the Game Time app the other day, and I came across my new favorite feature called Game Time Picks, and it is a total game changer. Game Time Picks curates your experience, showing you the best deals on great seats, and they make it so easy that it's truly a no-brainer, people. Seriously, Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets, and you can find out for yourself by downloading the Game Time app, creating an account, and using the code LIFE for $20 off your first purchase. $20 off, okay? Check it out. Why not? You're getting $20 off for free. All you got to do is use code LIFE. Terms do apply, but again, create an account, download the Game Time app, redeem code LIFE for $20 off. Download Game Time today, because what time is it? Game time. All right, Dwayne, another one that I do think is fairly reachable here for J.K. Dobbins. Needs 900 rushing yards here to go ahead and trigger some nice cash for himself. Currently at 842. So just needs 58 yards to go. Now, if he decides to go bonkers, maybe he could be clearing some of these other rushing incentives that we're going to pull up here in just a second. Not sure he's going to get the, 350 plus yards to go ahead and get over 1,200, Dwayne. But this is against the Raiders defense that he only needed 10 carries against to reach 135 all the way back in week 1.
Yeah, we saw him jump right back into that running back 1 role for the team in that first game back. Now, it wasn't a dominant role like we saw earlier in the year where he was getting that 70% snap rate, but it was his first game back. We also still may not have Gus Edwards back this week. We'll have to wait to get more news on that. I think that does matter. You've got Hassan Haskins, Kamani Vidal. They weren't really that involved last week, Ian, just really on passing downs, which is something that, honestly, J.K. Dobbins, he had all of that earlier in the year. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think at a minimum, he's in a role similar to what we saw last week. This is one of those iffy games, though, with the Chargers. There's a little bit of seeding at play. But like, how much do they want to risk their players, because the seeding isn't going to make that huge of a difference? They have already punched their ticket to the playoffs. So really interested to hear what Harbaugh and the coaching staff tells us, which will probably be nothing, knowing them about potential workloads here for these guys. But there is a little bit of risk here, because like it could be a scenario where we're resting a guy by the second half. I do think if they can, they'll try to get him to a spot where they can let him get the at least get over the amount he needs to get that first $150,000 bonus.
Dobbins certainly another guy along there with Sam Darnold who should be, a finalist for the Comeback Player of the Year award. I will say, though, as fantastic as Dobbins coming back from everything has been, not like this Chargers backfield among, Dobbins, Vidal, and Gus Edwards has exactly turned into this juggernaut. I mean, Chargers running back specifically this year, just 26 in tackles avoided per carry and 25th in yards after contact per carry. So maybe they bring all these guys back on cheap deals. I know Dobbins isn't making all that much to begin with, but man, Dwain, tough to look at this Chargers offense and not see it as one of the premier destinations for some of these free agent running backs and guys in the draft here very soon. I mean, if Najee Harris goes to Los Angeles, I know he's not, the alpha best running back in the world, man, but that just seems to me like a player Harbaugh would love to give the rock to 300 plus times.
Yeah, definitely has the archetype for it. He's been the healthier player. I think J.K. Dobbins has looked like the better football player this season. Yeah. But obviously you're going to have to pay him some money now, and you've got to worry about the injury history. So, yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. But I agree with you. Najee, and he would look pretty sweet in those colors. I got to say, like anybody really big wearing powder blue, like there's just something about it.
Something about it, indeed. And something about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Dwain, someone who low-key was the PPR wide receiver 25 from weeks 10 through 15, needs one more touchdown to trigger a $250K bonus. So he did miss last game with a chest injury, and he still is limited in practice as he was last week, so not a given. But can we get our guy, MVS, a touchdown, Dwain, or are we destined to see a massive sheesh and him literally dropping $250K?
Yeah, this is super tricky. Like, I don't know, flip a coin 5 times. It's just tough to say. You got Spencer Rattler under center. You don't have a lot of competition for targets, but he hasn't had that, and he hasn't been getting targeted. Like, he gets a few targets per game now. They have been good. Like, he has come through in a big way on those plays. But, man, I hope he gets it. I hope MVS gets it. But this one is just really tough to predict. The only thing we can say is, yeah, he's going to be highly motivated. So if you're thinking about DFS, things like that, I think MVS will be laying it all on the line for you this weekend.
Last game of the year, Dwain, can't hold anything back now, but maybe do hold Chris Olave back. What are you bringing this dude back for in week 18? Let the guy's brain heal for just a little bit longer. Last one we did want to note, though, Zach Ertz, guys, if he gets into the end zone twice, he will trigger a $250,000 bonus in this Washington versus the Cowboys matchup. So Commanders are seemingly going to be, going out there and trying to give it their all. It really does hurt Ertz because as great as his game was last week, he did drop a touchdown a bit earlier. So what a comeback season, Dwain. Even if he doesn't score, Zach Ertz 6 touchdowns on the year, his most since 2019.
Yeah, Zach Ertz started off the year as the guy that, was the sicko call pretty much every week at tight end. You got to where it was so often we just had to stop calling it the sicko call. But we could have every week called it that because he continued to just sit on waiver wires out there, Ian, despite outperforming guys that people held on to like Dalton Kincaid and, even Tucker Kraft. Like Zach Ertz has been more consistent than that guy. So a lot of tight ends out there that who may still be good in the future, but Zach Ertz for one more year, man, was holding them off. Will be motivated. It will be interesting. Commanders kind of in a similar bucket to the Chargers. A lot. They have some seeding to play for, but they've already locked up, their playoff spot. So how much does that seeding really matter to them? It's a team we could see play starters for like a half, right, and then rest them in the second half. Hard to know. Or they could just play balls to the wall the whole thing. We don't know for sure.
Ertz, number 1 on the Commanders and targets inside the 10-yard line. I'm sure he will get a couple more here in week 18. But that's going to wrap it up for us, guys. We will be back tomorrow going over some specific rankings questions and also some of the injuries, hopefully more info from the coaches along the way. So for Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.